Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. The guidance one receives is often unexpected. A Jewish woman began questioning why one prostrates and removes shoes when praying to God, which led her to convert to Islam. On her YouTube channel, she shares her journey. I was born into a Jewish family and converted to Islam in 2018, she says. Born in Montreal, Canada, into a Hasidic Jewish family, I was raised Hasidic after my parents divorced, though my mother took me out of the Hasidic community while still keeping us within the Jewish community. She explains, my father is Ashkenazi Jewish, with Eastern European roots. My maternal grandmother was born in Morocco, and my grandfather in Yemen. My mother was born in occupied Palestinian territory. I've always identified as Israeli, Moroccan, Yemeni, Ashkenazi Jewish. I consider myself ethnically Jewish but religiously Muslim. Her journey to Islam was not sudden. It was a long story. I received a Jewish education through high school. I always believed in God, the Torah, and Jewish teachings. I was a staunch Zionist and Israel supporter. I religiously observed Shabbat, kept kosher, and followed the Full Kosher. After high school, I began distancing myself from the Jewish community, meeting non-Jews and exchanging ideas. I started to doubt Judaism and distanced myself from it. She adds, I began to question what I practiced. I distanced myself from God. I lived like this for months until I felt a void without God's presence. So, on a bus to school, I read Psalms by King David. It's a good book. There's a part where King David prostrates in prayer to God, repeated many times. I wondered, why don't Jews prostrate in prayer? So, I researched prostration on Google. She emphasizes, I spoke with a rabbi, but it wasn't satisfying. I researched Karate Jews who follow the Torah. It felt odd that we observe Passover, Chanukah, Rosh Hashanah based on rabbi interpretations. I had a Muslim friend who never discussed religion. Then, I found an online Muslim community and we discussed various topics. I watched debates between Muslims and Jews. It turns out, Muslims and Jews worship the same God. She adds, Muslims believe in the Torah, Gospel, and all Jewish prophets. The difference is they believe in Jesus and Muhammad as the last messengers and the Quran as God's words. It's like an update to Judaism. So, it's not entirely different. Muslims prostrate in prayer because that's what God wants, what God says. She explains Jews used to prostrate too. Then rabbis said we don't need to do this anymore. Muslims pray without shoes, which makes sense because a mosque is a sacred place. When you pray, when you speak to God, you're addressing something very sacred. You should respect it and remove your shoes. You know, when Moses spoke to God near the fire, God said, remove your shoes, for this is sacred ground. So, remove your shoes. These little things made me think, Islam makes sense. She explains, then I started reading the Quran, and it made sense. At that point, I wasn't thinking about converting. If I converted, I'd have to give up everything. But I also thought becoming Muslim made me a better Jew. It's still the same religion. I realized this at some point. I quickly learned how to pray. She admits, since 2017, I've been convinced of Islam's truth. Then on January 28, 2018, I converted to Islam. I recited the SHAHADA. Just for your information, how was the development of Islam in Israel a few years ago, before the conflict intensified? The number of converts to Islam in Israel has increased drastically lately. However, Jewish organizations are trying to bring converts back to their original faith. In 2017, when a young Jewish woman from southern Israel converted to Islam and married an Arab Israeli, it shocked many in the country. The Israeli public usually views such marriages negatively due to the decades-long Israel-Palestine conflict, years of bloodshed, and mutual incitement. This also explains why Israeli society struggles to understand what could drive a Jewish woman into the arms of the enemy. Through an organization called Lehava, Gobstein's daughter and her husband try to persuade converts to return to Judaism. They incite converts to leave their new faith because Islam is often perceived as unfriendly to women. However, this accusation is clearly erroneous and misguided. According to Lahava's records, in 2003, only 40 Israeli Jews converted to Islam. But by 2006, the number nearly doubled, with 70 cases registered. Since then, the trend has continued to grow. Between 2005 and 2007, 250 Israelis officially converted to Islam, many of them women. A Jewish woman's spiritual quest led her to embrace Islam after a profound reflection on religious practices and beliefs. Her journey, marked by a deep examination of her Jewish roots and the teachings of Islam, culminated in her conversion in 2018. There is also a very interesting story to follow about a Jewish rabbi converting to Islam. Once, the Prophet Muhammad had a debt from the sale of dates to a Jewish rabbi named Zaid bin Sa'na. This debt was used to help the community of an area struck by famine, which is a difficult time or season of food shortage. 2 days before the due date, the Jewish rabbi came to collect his debt. At that time, the Prophet had just finished leading the funeral prayer for an Ansar. He was leaning against a wall with Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and several other companions also present. The Jewish rabbi approached the Prophet straightforwardly, forcefully pulling on the Prophet's garment, and he shouted, "Muhammad, where is my debt? I know you Bani Abdul Muttalib are prone to delaying debt repayment." Zaid bin Sa'na, the Jewish rabbi, recounted, "I then looked at Umar bin Khattab, and I saw his eyes spinning with anger and fury upon hearing my words. He said to me, 'O enemy of Allah, how dare you pull the garment and speak rudely to the Prophet? By Allah, if it were not for the fact that you are a dhimmi, I would have split your body in two.'" The Prophet turned to Umar very calmly and with authority, and he said, "O Umar, we need from you a better attitude than this. You should advise me on good debt repayment and advise him, the Jewish rabbi, on good debt collection." Then the Prophet said, "O Umar, go to the treasury and pay this Jew's debt, and add 20 saw of dates as compensation for the fear you have caused him." Umar immediately took the rabbi and paid his debt, adding another 20 saw of dates. The rabbi asked, "What is this extra for?" Umar replied, "The Prophet instructed me to add it for you as compensation because I frightened you." The rabbi then said, "O Umar, do you know who I am?" "No," Umar answered. "I am Zaid bin Sa'na," the Jewish man replied. Umar asked, "The Jewish rabbi?" "Yes," the rabbi confirmed. "Why were you rude and disrespectful to the Prophet earlier?" Umar inquired. "O Umar, I have seen all the signs of prophethood in his face, except for 2 signs. I wanted to test these 2 signs directly. The first sign is that his courtesy overcomes his emotions. And the second is that the more he is belittled and his emotions provoked, the more courteous he becomes. And I have proven both signs myself today. So witness, O Umar, I testify that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his servant and messenger, and I donate half of my wealth to the Muslims," narrated by Ibn Hibban. Zaid bin Sa'na became a devout Muslim and a fighter for Islam. He died in the Battle of Tabuk, striving in the path of Allah and his messenger. That's all for this video. I hope it has been useful. See you in the next video. Peace be upon you, and God's mercy and blessings.